What's going on? Boys, arm yourselves. Life stuff. I feel like dying, or I feel like I am dying. So, what we're going to do is talk about the course of events that led to this trough form of normal feelings, and then we'll talk about some feelings I have been thinking about in the trough. My body works, and I'm thankful for that, but it does like fucking with me a lot of the time. It will just do things to fuck up my flow or throw me. This most recent one was not letting me sleep again, which is not alien. This happens, but this one was particularly rough. So I normally average around 5 hours of sleep per night, and I have a routine for dealing with the 24 plus hours moments when they happen. So when I first realized it was going to be a piss every 10 minutes and sleep not at all nights, I started the journey with work. If you have all this extra time, then you can at least use it or attempt to use it in a productive way. So I organized my calendar, I put together some task lists and worked on some older task lists, and I read some tarot. Thank you to everybody who orders. And then I went to work. Now, typically, alcohol is my insomnia tool, both for dealing with it while I'm in the middle of it, and then finally putting it to rest. Now, I have some box wine stashed in my workplace, but it's usually an emergency hyperinsomnia thing, and I haven't needed to break into it in quite some time. Today was one of those days, or not today, yesterday, actually. But I realized that box wine went out of date almost a year ago, and it's technically open. I don't really know how box wines keep, but I learned in taste this one did not keep well. But I'm not going to stop trying to use this as a tool. So I am, every 15 minutes or so, taking a sip of this rancid wine. It's, it's bad when your wine has a texture, when it tastes like there's some kind of dust coil in the wine. And when you're having a bad day like this, do people try to help you? No. It is National Pick and Nag Day. And toward the end of the day, I'm realizing this insomnia case, for whatever reason, is more intense than it usually is. Because at least 2 times I audibly heard someone start to nag me, and then they weren't there. Which I think I've mentioned before. I'm pretty sure the facility I work in is haunted, so that's double spooky. And my plan, which is usually my plan for these 24 plus hours things, and we're getting close to 36 hours, is get home as soon as possible, get hammered, and then pass out early so I can catch up on sleep. And I won't totally catch up on sleep even with going to sleep early, but it's at least a start, and pass out alcohol that usually handles not just insomnia but most problems, which is why alcohol is so dangerous. I think it's the most effective and human nature-y drug, but we'll get to that. Anyway, plan gets interrupted. Of course. You're 36 hours awake, and you are confronted with the need to do a few hours of hard manual labor in an emergency. Imagine being 36 hours awake and needing to do the equivalent of pushing your car a few miles through a desert, necessity and trouble. And it was not pushing a car, had nothing to do with driving, but I had brought my box wine with me, so I wanted to start on the drinking just to get through this. Because, again, alcohol for me, when I can't sleep, it somehow focuses me and makes the suffering type tired go away while I have a buzz going. So I force myself to drink a full glass of this wine, and it makes me want to vomit. And that isn't a good way to start your surprise manual labor thing, especially when you chug it. So I'm sweating to death, 36 hours, and it did work, technically. I did get a nice little buzz going, but I have dust coil wine in my stomach wanting to kill me. And when I finally get done and I shower, I am closing in on death mode. But we aren't at death mode yet. Right now we are just in the holy shit, I feel like I'm dying phase. And feeling like you're dying and brushing shoulders with death are different things. Not that we actually were going to die, but again, we'll get to that. So I sit down and drink a glass of Jameson. Usually, because I don't really have a tolerance right now, that would be enough to put me into sleep mode quickly. But nothing. Drink the full glass, nothing. So I drink a second glass of Jameson. Again, nothing. So, and typically I keep wine. Nice wine is my if I were drinking. Nice red wine is my relaxation drink, and I don't keep it around because I typically don't drink for pleasure anymore because I can't. The reason I had that box red at work was that is wine. Red wine is my functional alcoholic drink. Again, you don't need to drink a lot to get a buzz, but it's not like you're fucking rolling a cylinder with liquor. I keep spirits around specifically for insomnia. I like my beer, I like my wine, but if it's knockout time, it is liquor. And if we were doing the functional alcoholic Skimmerlit special, it would be a can of Hurricane with 3 shots of vodka. You do 2 of those. Did I say 3 shots of vodka? I think I did. You're totaling up to 6 shots of vodka, 2 cans of Hurricane as quickly as you can, just to go bye-bye. But I can't... I think that's a malt liquor, but the reason I like Hurricane is it tastes like a beer. Can't find that where I am. So we're just sticking to liquor, and liquor is the devil. Anyway, just about out of Jameson, so I have to do a little bit of Jameson and then a glass or most of a glass of vodka. And then, violently, it all hits me, all at once, and I achieved the pinnacle of alcoholism, or a pinnacle of alcoholism, I haven't felt in quite some time, which is physically painfully drunk. You hit the point, your body isn't saying you're going to throw up, but it is saying we're going to make taking any more sips feel like fire ants in your throat. So I have crashed into this level of inebriation. I can't drink anymore, but I'm not passing out, and I can't sleep still. And oddly enough, I can't even cry, which is an odd thing because I'm a yappy drunk and I'm a crybag drunk. And that's when I realized I haven't really cried in over a year. And I'm not crying now, and I don't know why that is. Because when I used to drink, when I was drinking constantly, I would drink specifically to be able to cry. Just to start crying for no reason. Can't sleep, can't cry. So, what do you do, again, when you have hours that you're just not, that you would otherwise not make use of? You work. More tarot. Thank everybody who orders. But I had to do an uglier reading, which, of course, that is the exact sort of reading you want to be doing while you're drunk, because if someone comes to me or wants a reading for a serious problem, or they at least they make me aware of a serious problem, I can't stop people from not telling me about something, I won't do it. And in this reading, I'm dealing with a problem that started out as a small thing. It didn't even really seem like a problem. But it keeps showing up to the point I'm realizing this is a major problem and I've been thinking about it. And I need to do or say something because I'm beginning to recognize this, what appeared to be a smaller thing, is actually a more serious problem. And will of the universe, the cards feel the same way. The little cards are getting mean and condescending each time I do one of these readings, and now they're starting to guilt trip me. Are you really going to continue taking money from this person when in this situation you really know you shouldn't? And there are many ways to deal with that tastefully. But when you are violently drunk, not physically violently, but inebriatedly violently drunk, and you're awake for 40 hours, and it feels like your muscles are disconnecting from your bones and your skin is disconnecting from your muscles, the solution is get it done now in a way that it won't become a problem later. And how do you do that? At least in a way that washes your hands of the situation. Offending people. We live in this weird time. Offending can be framed as a good thing, but I don't think it is in any situation. It can be necessary, but it's never a good thing. It's never something to be praised or put on a pedestal. Because real offense is like, or creates what feels like psychic tears. And I think all actions do have these psychic effects, but offense is a potent one. It's like an anti-black hole. It is the essence of repulsion. I'm sure you've been in a situation you have watched someone else be offended, and you, without being the giver or the receiver, feel that repulsion and want to be away from it. Again, sometimes necessary, sometimes you need that immediate and violent repulsion, but never good. And that's when it hit me why I think alcohol is the most human drug. It puts you, or it interfaces you directly with feeling disentangled from context. And I've been playing Disco Elysium this last week. I like saying again a lot. So maybe this was my vision quest set off by replaying this game. But anyway, alcohol tells you exactly how you feel unframed. It is your human feeling without the constraints of human perceptions of time or structure. It's not liquid courage, it is liquid emotional clarity in the messiest way possible. Another example, something I have been stewing on recently and have known but hadn't confronted that directly. Getting really drunk is like sitting down face to face with your soul. So some people on this channel sometimes try to communicate with me, and for the most part, I have stopped that because that's never a good idea. But recently I made an exception because this person was doing and saying everything right. Everything right. Suspiciously so. And typically, because life is what it is, whenever something seems or feels really right, it's because it's very wrong. And thanks to that instinct, I found and put together everything I would need to justify that suspicion and burn down Pandora's box. Because that is what any form of hope is. And we'll talk more about hope shortly, but in this instance, if you ever feel yourself hoping for something good, it is so bad. It is worse than you have the clues right now to put together. It's worse than the worst thing you can think of when you feel yourself hoping for something good. And I knew this sober. That's what kills me about it. That is what is so deadly about hope. You have rationally everything you need, and you're using your rationality to try to drown out what your instincts already know. We've talked about this before. What you think and what you know. Alcohol makes you confront what you know. And I finally pulled the plug, got that last little bit of justifiable suspicion, and pulled the plug on another of God's little tests. I'll never know what was going on there. I'm never going to find out. But it wasn't good. And the fact it took me this fucking hell quest to listen to my instincts tells me how bad that would have been. Because hope is deadly. I think it is Metal Gear Solid V's one of the Skullface tapes. He talks about the way people think, or no matter how bad their situation is, they will always cling to the hope there's a way out. There's a happy ending, or at least there's an escape. It is so hard rationally to accept the fact there isn't one. And I think on some level, people know there isn't one. That's what is one thing you will hear people say during bad times. They'll confide in you. What is an almost universal thing people will tell you or they'll feel when things are getting really bad? What do they want? I want someone to tell me everything is going to be okay. Why is that what people want? It's because they know things are not going to be okay. And their circumstances, their present circumstances, are pushing them closer to needing to accept that fact. The fact things are not going to be okay it's a switch that's always on, but routine, mundanity, decent circumstances, or decent luck, rather, okay fortune, drowns out the noise that switches enablement sounds out. They want someone powerful to save them, or someone wise to know on their behalf things are going to be okay. Because they, in the driver's seat of their lives, are closing in on the only exit. The freeway is ending. Things are not going to be okay. It's like asking for or wishing for multiple second opinions on your mortality. And I think that's what all this false positivity bullshit going around is. It is, on a lower level, this praying for a savior instead of accepting reality. We put the on a lower level in the front. On a lower level. I can repeat myself. It is it's human desire. For example, the lists of ways to appreciate life. Appreciate the small things. Get out and meet people, talk to people, do all this shit. So, all the lists, all the things, I have tried them sincerely at different points in my life. High school, university, university again, and then most recently, perhaps the most earnest attempt, I spent most of last year trying to be positive. Everything you're supposed to do, I did. And I ended up here. And I think it's because truth, anything that is true, anything that is real, does not require reasoning. Doesn't require effort. It's not trying to see the positives. If something is positive, it is positive and you feel positivity from it. You don't need to try to find the painful things in life or to see the negative side of things. They just happen. You don't need to try to understand them or to philosophize about them or to make lists about them. They just are, and you feel them. And most things are bad. Most things are negative. That is why the few positive things in life really do feel positive, because they don't require explanation. They don't require a conceptual framework to extract or to strangle any positive feelings out of them. They just are positive. But most things are not positive. Most things are negative. Most things are painful. I'm thinking about it as trying to see the positives or appreciating the small things as trying to see the love in something. If you need to try to make yourself feel love, then it isn't love. It is desire wearing one of its many different masks. You don't like the way you feel. You haven't accepted the way you feel. Not that you ever will accept the way you feel, but there's a difference between understanding that you can't get away from these things and still thinking you can try, and then trying to delude yourself into feeling something you don't feel by imbuing different not positive things with your idea of positivity. That's why this false positivity bullshit doesn't go away. If these were answers, if you really could just make yourself feel positive by doing A, B, and C, we would have a comprehensive this is it list. We would have solved it already. You don't see grifters teaching you all the different ways to make fire constantly. Making fire isn't at the center of everybody's minds, because we know how to make fire. You can reiterate it, but that problem is already solved. This feeling bad thing is so discussed and is so protected too. People really hate when you don't, work the shaft of false positivity because they know it's not solved. And on some level, I think people recognize this is not something that can be solved. And that level of powerlessness is not something people are comfortable with. They hate it, they're terrified of it. They want anything but to be confronted with it, or to confront it themselves. That's even worse. And one of the other things I realized in this painfully drunk state is I'm not depressed. Sadness is not the feeling I walk around with. I think I'm going to need to do some more thinking about this, but I think, for now, it is motion or the need to move with nowhere to go. I try to confront feeling bad so it at least can't make me feel even more powerless by reminding me that I can't fight it, but I still don't like feeling bad. It still feels so bad. I want out, but there's nowhere to go. Except there is, but not really. If this is the way existence feels, and you want out, you can stop existing. I mean, you will stop existing at some point, but you can go there earlier, but it isn't really a way out. Because cranial reconstruction is... it's not stopping the hurt, it is a denial of everything. Not just everything you know, but your way of knowing. You want positive feelings and sensations, not to stop feeling and sensing altogether, right? Because if you take that step, it is a step into the total unknown. It's irreversible, and it's not a solution to your problems. It is the denial of one's ability to have problems, which is, I think, distinct from a solution, which is probably in part why I haven't done it. Plus overwhelming cowardice. You're built to hurt. You are not built not to hurt. But that got me thinking. At what point does hurt override what you're built to do, or your irrational human hope that things could be okay? Because people do skull reconstruction. But what I find more interesting is not the emotional hurt skull reconstruction, but the physical hurt skull reconstruction. That's sick, but interesting. At what point does physical pain override that? Make you willing to step through that door, desperately want to step through that door? I was listening to the Saint O'Neill tapes, and he talked about the highway burning blaster thing. If you've listened to the tapes, I'm sure you know which one I'm talking about. The one that stuck with him on live television. Pain of all sorts prompts that urge to move we mentioned. It's not sadness. It is the desire or the need to move, but there's only one way to go. So at what point does pain override your fear of movement and just make you move? And what are you feeling in that moment? And I specifically mean the directed explosive getting shot out of a cannon movement. Is it like your demon, invisible guardian demon tender overwatered you? Right? Maybe pain is something you're supposed to feel, but only in certain amounts, and if you get hit with too much of it, you die like a plant would. Saint O'Neill's example caught on fire and did anything to make it stop, to make that pain stop immediately. Way too much pain, way too quickly. Anything to make it stop. And I ask this question because this is what I'm thinking about while I am painfully drunk, 40 plus hours awake, lying there, unable to sleep, and that was the other thing I mentioned, melatonin. I took 15 melatonin the first night, nothing. Melatonin again last night, nothing. And I'm beginning to think these pain levels or sensations are like concentric rings. The ring I found myself in last night, those sensations were not in the middle, but they were closer to the middle than I have been in a long time. Lying there with all these physical and emotional sensations going, God, I really understand how a person would do anything to make this stop, to get any form of relief, or rather, not relief, just escape. I'm not there, but I am in the vicinity of physically seeing how a person would go out like that, why they would. Please, just anything to make this stop. And I did end up passing out at some point and getting some of that desired sleep, even though I'm still exhausted. I haven't caught up yet. But I'm thinking about all this, and it's like the world is designed in so many ways to make you not want to live in it, but not so intensely you will overcome your fear of not living in it. It's like an abusive relationship. You're codependent with a reality that does not like you, but you feel you need because you don't know anything else. And unlike an abusive relationship, I am not saying that death is the answer. Like, if you're in an abusive relationship, clearly, might not feel that way, but clearly the answer is to get away from that person. The answer is to get away from that person. And I want to reiterate, I want to stress, I don't know what to make of all this. Just that hurt doesn't generate sadness necessarily. It generates pricklings or urges to move. But the only place you really can move is jumping headfirst into something that makes no sense and is irreversible and doesn't really solve the problems you're feeling. Even though the whole reason this isn't sadness that you feel, it is this urge to move, is that there are no solutions to this problem, this hurt that you're feeling. It's like the only answer to the question you are being begged, or the question that's being begged constantly, always, the one answer that is really an answer is not an answer. But there is a singularity you can get closer and closer to, at which the question isn't begged, it's forced. It's not should you move, it's you need to move. Or you have no other option but to move. And again, I don't know what to make of all this, but the last couple days have been a horrible, wacky journey. And I feel the question is being begged harder, and I have to come up with something. I have to make an attempt at an answer, even though the only things we can come up with are further proof that there is not an answer. But we're rambling, so we'll cut it here. Don't light yourself on fire. Fire's hot. It's not sadness, it's movement. And I really don't know, amidst all this, I really don't know what to make of the fact that we're going to die. Why are we supposed to make peace with death, but not with so sad? Not that you have the balls to anhero with anyway, but anheroing doesn't matter. You're going there. Is Fight Club supposed to be a holy text? That's one that's been on my mind lately. but we don't talk about nearly enough. Because I do think Fight Club is an actual holy text once you get past or beyond the superficial this is a holy text-ness. It's a weird one. Specifically in the accepting pain, or at least not fighting it, and understanding or trying to understand mortality, not deal with it. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't.